my name is Jacob Christensen, and I was asked to speak about Veterans Day because of my experience as a soldier and as a therapist. To provide some background, I served 6 years in the National Guard, and in 2008 I was deployed to Afghanistan as a member of Alpha Company in the 142nd Military Intelligence Battalion, 300th Military Intelligence Brigade, which at the time was attached to the 101st Airborne Division. In thinking about what I could say, I thought back to a couple years after I returned, and when I was in my car listening to the radio on the way to work, I found myself getting frustrated because every segment was about some war story or hero sacrifice on the battlefield. I didn't really understand what was happening, but about 30 minutes later, I realized that it was Veterans Day. I think somebody on the radio had mentioned it. Since then, I don't really listen to the radio or watch the news on November 11th. My experience as a soldier is a little bit unique. When I was in basic training, we were in a large classroom waiting for instructors to figure out some technical difficulties. The drill sergeants had run out of ways to have us exercise in place. They always are trying to find creative ways to use up time. One of them then told everybody to stand up. He said that anybody without a high school diploma should sit down. This would be like those kids that come right out of high school or before they graduate. Then he said everybody with a high school diploma should sit down, and most of the people at that point were seated. The next level was a bachelor's degree. About 10 of us were still standing after that. Once he called out master's degree, there were only 2 of us left. We looked at each other, realizing we were a bit different. The drill sergeants, of course, proceeded to have fun at our expense. And it was at that point that I kind of realized that things were different. I had already finished all my coursework in the doctorate program for marriage and family therapy. I actually finished my PhD 2 months after being activated for deployment. When I was in Afghanistan, I was part of a HUMINT team that would go outside the wire with different units, and sometimes by ourselves, to gather information. It wasn't too long before I had my first experience where my life was on the line. It was a surreal experience to know that I was experiencing trauma and being helpless to control the situation. About halfway through my tour, I was at Bagram to go on leave, and another soldier who knew my background as a therapist shared with me the symptoms of PTSD that he was experiencing after a particularly awful experience. The therapist part of me tried to speak up and offer some suggestions, but I just couldn't do it. I ended by saying something along the lines of, "Brother, you're going to have to talk to someone else. I can't even help myself right now." Now, in terms of some useful suggestions, if you have a loved one come home from deployment, be willing to give them some time to get back to normal. My wife has often said that I just wasn't right for about a year after I got back. I didn't see it at the time, and I thought that things were fine. I should have realized that my anxiety at not carrying a gun with me everywhere I went, for example, was probably a sign to the contrary. Maybe things weren't so good. Things did start to get back to normal after a while, and I finally felt my body relax about 8 months after coming home. I'll never forget that moment. So first and foremost, give veterans a little grace while they are trying to readjust. It's not an easy process. Second, for those who were deployed, give your family space to keep operating according to the rules that they've established in your absence. When you left, they had to pick up the slack and create a new family system in your absence. It causes unnecessary conflict when the returning veteran tries to pick up exactly where they left off. Just like a veteran needs time to adjust to being in a non-life-threatening situation, families need time to adjust to having a member be added again. The last thing that I want to talk about is just how to recognize a veteran on Veterans Day. David Barno and Nora Bansahel gave some great suggestions about how to approach these types of interactions. Saying thank you for your service is fine, but it's something that we've heard over and over again from people who aren't even genuine. Questions that do show genuine interest are better. Some of the questions that those authors suggested are, what was your job? Or what was the most rewarding part of doing it? What made you proud of being in uniform? Or what did you do in your free time while you were deployed? These types of questions give the person an opportunity to reflect on the aspects of their service that were the most positive and worth remembering. And in this little bit of presentation or discussion, I've painted a picture of what it's like for those who would rather avoid thinking about their experiences. I once read an article by a man named Pastor Corey, which talked about what it means to be a veteran and why he loves and hates Veterans Day. He explained that it is more about pain than patriotism, faces than flags, and losses than liberty. The losses are painful and fade only slowly. The faces of those left behind stay with you for years. While this is true for many people who have served overseas, it's obviously not the case for everyone. There will, of course, be those who love to talk about their time in uniform and appreciate every bit of recognition offered. Each veteran's experience will be unique, so that's what you should remember. If you remember that's the case and show genuine interest in the individual, that will mean as much or more than anything else that you might do. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this little bit of information, and hopefully it's helpful for you in your interactions with those who have served.